Hi, everyone, and welcome back for another episode of Malice in the Mitten. I am your host, Tracy Preston, along with my bestie, Christine Mulligan. Hey, Christine.
Hey, Trace. Hey, everybody out there. What are we getting into today, Trace? What are you telling me about? Where are we going with this?
Today, we're kind of going to do a revisit of a place that we did a story on in the past in Lawton, and we got another story for you. Today's story is researched and written by Rebecca Hiers, so thank you, Rebecca. All right. Well, in Season 8, Episode 10, we visited a story in Lawton, Michigan, in Van Buren County, and this was a story about the death of Todd Sturmer in 2007. So as I mentioned, today we are returning back to Lawton, but in the year 1916, to take a look at one of the most bizarre death cover-ups ever. So buckle up and join us as we journey back in time to Lawton, Michigan. Let's get into it. This is Season 8, Episode 22, A Box in the Basement. The story of Maud Tabor. Lester and Sarah Tabor married and moved to Lawton, Michigan around 1867. The couple had 3 children: Florence, born on September 6th, 1872, Maud, born October 8th, 1880, and Walter, born June 13th, 1889. All 3 went on to graduate from Lawton High School. Lester was a successful attorney in town, and the family lived a good life. They came across a nice but standoffish family that kept to themselves. Florence married Charles Critchlow in 1898, and the couple moved to California. Florence was an aspiring writer, and it was felt she stood a better chance of success there than in Lawton. Walter became a farmer and worked for the Erie Railroad as a clerk, and Maud continued her education, graduating from the University of Michigan with a Bachelor of Arts in 1900. She obtained work as a high school teacher in Michigan and also in Utah. Lester died on August 29, 1911, leaving his estate to his wife. At the time, it was valued at about $75,000, roughly $2,550,378 in today's money. Say what? That's freaking nuts. That's a lot of money. In 1911?
That's a lot of money.
That's a ton of money. He was a pretty good attorney, I want to say.
Obviously, he was working it in.
Yeah, he represented everybody, I think. Everybody and their brother.
Well, the beginnings of why we all really don't like lawyers.
Mm-hmm.
Nicest of them all.
All right, well, Florence wasn't comfortable with her mother having that much money and felt that she and Walter should have it. Walter was a struggling farmer with 3 children, and she was a struggling writer. They felt that they deserved the money more than their mother did. Of course they did. Man, money makes people do crazy, crazy things.
You know, it really is a shame how much influence and how much impact we put on money alone. Like, I really wish more people just kind of found their groove and then learned how to live within that groove. Whatever makes them happy. It's not about money. It's about what you want. But anyway, I'll get off my soapbox. Go ahead. Money and greed.
Money and greed. Okay. In 1915, Florence and Walter began the paperwork to have her mother judged incompetent. However, Ma didn't think that Sarah was incompetent and defended their mother, fighting against her siblings. Thanks to Maud's backing, Florence and Walter lost in their bid to grab the money, and Sarah was allowed to keep it. Now, this led to many bad feelings in the family, which were intensified when, in an attempt to keep her children's hands off her money, Sarah transferred everything into Maud's name. Soon after losing the court case, Florence also lost her marriage, and after the divorce, she moved back to Lawton. Later that year, Maud moved to your favorite place, Christine, Kalamazoo, where it was said she was teaching in the fall of 1915, but by Christmas, she had moved back to Lawton to live with Sarah. Things seemed tense in the family, as you can imagine, but things were going well overall. Then, in May of 1916, Maud disappeared. Being a school teacher, Maud was known about town. She was known to be unusually smart, but odd and eccentric. In February, Maud had sent a letter to a friend in Utah stating that she wanted to return to Ogden to teach, but was uncertain of her plans since, quote, "My sister is set on making trouble over what my father left my mother." People inquired as to where she was, and Sarah told them she had returned to Utah to teach. She also told people that Maud was seeing after some mining interests she had out west, and alternately that Maud had gone west and died in Colorado. Now, nobody really knew where she was. They just knew she was gone. By 1919, Sarah and Florence had come to terms with each other, and with Maud missing and Sarah getting older, Florence moved in with her. Sarah had also made peace with Walter and his family, and in August of 1919, Sarah, Walter, and Walter's oldest son set out for a trip to California. They were going to drive and just take their time, stop and see the sights, a real vacation, an extended vacation of months. Florence stayed at the home she shared with her mother alone. On Saturday, November 29th, 1919, Florence needed something from the basement of the home. Going downstairs, she began to rummage about. Maybe she thought she would clean it up since Sarah wasn't home to stop her. While digging about, she came upon a trunk. A pile of roofing shingles was thrown on top of it. Moving the shingles to get a better look at the trunk, she noticed the trunk was partially buried, and she became curious. Why would a trunk be partially buried and then covered in the basement? So, after removing the items covering it, she opened it. Inside the trunk was her missing sister, Maud's body. Immediately after discovering the body, she called her attorneys. Their offices were located in Paw Paw, and they couldn't make it to Lawton until the following day, which was Sunday. She then contacted the authorities. About 5 p.m., Sheriff Lang, Deputy Cross, Justice Rowland, Assistant Prosecutor Glenn Weaver, Court Stenographer Ford Wilbur, and Doctors Wilbur and Young showed up at the Tabor house. Under their guidance, the trunk and body were carefully removed and taken to the offices of the undertaker, Lewis Cameron. A post-mortem was conducted on the body, and it was discovered that Maud was pregnant. She was far enough along that they were able to determine that she would have been a mother to a little girl, and she was even close to giving birth. Oh my God. Rumors flew. The town's former undertaker, Joseph Virgo, had been an acquaintance of long-standing to Maud and her family. In 1916, it was rumored the two had gone to Indiana and gotten married. For a time, Joseph had lived with Sarah and Maud, with him moving out shortly after Maud disappeared. He was not well regarded in the town, and suspicion immediately fell on Joseph, having either been responsible for her death or a party to it. If the two had married, as rumors suggested, she would have been his fifth wife, and it was well known that he did not capitalize N-O-T. He did not want children. But would Sarah have kept her daughter's death quiet to protect Joseph or to protect her daughter's reputation? Wires were sent and the search was on to get Sarah and Walter back to Michigan. While that was going on Tuesday, December 2nd, 1919, the body was examined by a third doctor, Dr. Crane, also from Kalamazoo. He agreed with Dr. Wilbur and Dr. Young that Maud was pregnant and due to deliver. He also found that her liver and kidneys were well preserved, while the rest of the body was in a state of decay. A pathology doctor from the University of Michigan came to examine Maud on the following Monday. Now, according to him, Maud died from a botched abortion attempt. He discovered that the clothing around the body in the trunk showed evidence of trying to stop a hemorrhage. He believed that the body was in part preserved due to a poorly done attempt at embalming. He also believed that lye had been put on the body in an attempt to dissolve it, but it ended up preserving parts of it instead. A coroner's inquest was held, and on December 10th, the doctors presented their findings. A jury of 6 men charged Joseph Virgo and Walter Tabor and Sarah Tabor with murder. Warrants were issued for their arrests. The inquest had started on December 1st. Florence was called to testify, and her answer to every question was, quote, "I refuse to answer." Joseph Virgo, who was now living in South Bend, Indiana, was brought back to Michigan to give his testimony, dubbed the amorous embalmer by the press. He had remarried by this time to wife number 6. He admitted that he and Maud had married on September 18th, 1915 in LaGrange, Indiana. She used the name Emma, not Maud, on their wedding certificate. He would claim this was his first marriage. At the time he married Maud, he had an office in Kalamazoo, and he stated Maud and Sarah had come to him there in November of 1915 to tell him that she was pregnant. During the inquest, both Florence and Joseph were held at the jail in Paw Paw under the guise of them being material witnesses to the crime. On December 5th, a telegraph was received at the sheriff's office stating that Walter and Sarah had been arrested and were being held in California. The appropriate authorities headed west to bring them back to Michigan. They were to return on December 17th. It was at this point Joseph refused to talk anymore, and he hired an attorney, W.J. Bernard. A court date was set for his trial in January of 1920. The pressure of being held prisoner became too much for Florence, and maybe she was thinking she was the only one left to get Dad's money if Sarah and Walter were found guilty and Maud was dead, and she told the authorities that she was willing to help in any way she could. Oh, big surprise. The vacationers were returned by train and arrived in Lawton on December 18th. They were immediately taken to the jail in Paw Paw to testify at the coroner's inquest. Hundreds came to hear Sarah's testimony. The entire town knew of her dispute with Florence and Walter. This was another intriguing chapter of the Tabor family saga and fuel for gossip in this tiny town. Sarah seemed cheerful and rather defiant when she testified, the papers claimed in their reporting, stating that Maud had a fear of being alone. She first said that the two of them had a death pact. The death pact stated that should one of them die before the other, neither would be put into the ground until the other one died, so they wouldn't have to be alone. She told the inquest panel that Maud had died from an overdose of chloroform that she self-administered. She stated she then put Maud's body in the trunk and hauled it to the basement. Being in jail, however, gave Sarah time to think, and as time went on, she changed her story to state that Joseph had been the one to kill Maud while performing an illegal abortion on his wife. This testimony absolved Walter from having anything to do with the murder, and he was released on December 23rd. Sarah, however, still faced charges of manslaughter. Joseph's preliminary trial began on January 7th, 1920. He was no longer facing charges of murder, but rather manslaughter, due to the lack of any real evidence. He had been an undertaker, thus, this could account for the partial embalming. He had been her husband and didn't want any children. This could maybe prove that he tried to abort the baby, although it seems it would be rather late for that. If they told him in November she was pregnant, by the time she disappeared in May, she would have been about 8 months pregnant. But there was nothing but circumstantial evidence that he was directly involved. The hearing to determine a trial date was set for January 14th. However, Van Buren County Board of Supervisors had hired a special investigator to look deeper into the case. His name was Gladstone Beatty. That's a great name. A former sheriff. Beatty went to Walter's house in Kalamazoo on the morning of the 14th to talk to him. Walter told him that on May 1, 1916, Sarah had given Maud an overdose of chloroform and killed her. When this news reached the prosecutor, he dropped the charges against Joseph, and he was released. The next day, January 15th, Walter took back his statement, accusing Beatty of misrepresenting himself. He claimed that Beatty told him that he was working for Sarah, and his testimony would help to clear up any confusion and clear her name. He said he was forced to lie. January 30th was the preliminary hearing for Sarah. She was charged with murder, manslaughter, performing a criminal operation, which was the abortion, and criminal negligence for failing to provide medical assistance as Maud lay bleeding out. She pleaded not guilty to all 4 charges, and she was returned to jail to await her trial on Monday, April 19th.
So wait a minute. The woman's in jail and the doctor is out free?
Yeah, they let him go.
Huh, ain't that some shit?
It's a man's world, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, what do you mean the times? Okay, carry on.
Right.
Ain't that some shit?
Yep.
Okay.
All right. The prosecutor claimed in part that money was the reason for the murder. Maud still had $20,000 of her money that Sarah had transferred to Maud's name to prevent Florence and Walter from taking it. They had found transfers of that money back to Sarah after Maud had died. Joseph had disappeared back to Indiana and refused to come back to Michigan to testify either for or against Sarah. Only 6 witnesses were called for the defense. The jury deliberated 36 hours and returned deadlocked. 8 for conviction, 4 against. A retrial was scheduled for June, but her attorneys argued Sarah's poor health. 2 doctors testified that she probably had less than 30 days to live, as she had just had 2 heart attacks while awaiting her trial. Sarah was set free and never tried again. Despite her poor health and the doctor's diagnoses, Sarah lived until September 15th, 1931, when she died at the age of 85. How about that?
What?
That's nuts.
So she got blamed for everything, but then got set free?
Yeah, her doctors are like, yo, this chick's on death's door. She lived for quite a while. Because they're like, hey, she's not even going to make it through the month. Well, she made it quite a while.
Huh?
What? What the hell?
However, it balanced out.
Yep.
But I don't understand why she was in prison all that time when he was the one that did everything.
Yeah. Well.
And he never paid the piper.
Well, remember, it's like, oh, no. She died of an overdose from chloroform from her sister over here. Right?
Yeah,
So they're like, he didn't do it. It wasn't a botched abortion. Okay. What about all the clothes with the blood?
Yeah, that's really silly.
Yeah, this was a combo effort, I'm thinking.
Yeah.
I'm going to chloroform her. You get busy with the whatever you're using there.
I'm going to butcher her, and you just will make her sleepy. What?
Yeah, she won't know a thing.
Even Steven.
Yeah. What the hell?
Gosh.
All right. Now, at the age of 82, Sarah fell ill and broke her hip. While recovering from the injury, confined to her bed, she spoke to the Kalamazoo Gazette. Quote, Maud had a premonition of her fate. The day before she died, she felt that the end would come soon. She had a horror of being buried out in the cemetery with Virgo's other wives. And taking my hand, she cried repeatedly while tears ran down her cheeks. You won't let them take me out there, will you, Mother? You won't ever let them take me away from you? She went on to state that Maud had gone into labor and administered chloroform to herself to relieve the pain. Maud also had asthma, and the chloroform was hindering her breathing. Sarah claimed she briefly left the room and came back to find her dead in the bed, while the chloroform bottle empty and drops of it scattered about. Afraid of publicity, she called no one for help. Maud laid unborn child inside her on the bed for at least a day. She told the paper there had been trouble with Joseph and she was trying to avoid more. She went on to say, quote, I did what I thought best for her. The more I reflected on it, the more I became convinced that I ought to bury the body in the basement. Maud had a horror of the conventional funeral, the fuss, the ostentation, the hollow mockery, all of that. So, I placed the body in the hope chest and lowered it into the basement myself by means of ropes around the door posts. Maud was 36 at the time of her death, both now at rest at the Oak Grove Cemetery in Lawton. While no one was convicted of her murder, this case is considered closed. Now, it's sadly ironic that Maud was placed in a hope chest. Now, for those who don't know, up until about the 1950s, parents or grandparents would present a young girl with a chest or trunk. This was called the hope chest. Now, into the chest, a young girl would place items that hopefully would help her run a house as a young wife. Clothes that she or her mother made to be worn on their honeymoon, linens for the home, such as tablecloths, napkins, pillowcases, and quilts, would go into the chest. Sometimes they would hold dishes for her future home to serve meals on to her future husband. The hope was she would marry and use these items inside of it. It was basically a box of a young girl's dreams. A pregnant lady who died perhaps dreaming of the new life she was about to give birth to, buried in a box that once held her dreams and hidden in a dark basement, is one of the saddest ironies. I mean, wow.
That whole thing is tragic.
Yeah.
The whole hope chest thing. I mean, on one hand, it's endearing, the whole idea of a hope chest. Yeah. And on the other, it is sick, sadistic, twisted programming.
Yeah.
Can't even get past. Ugh. Yeah.
Wow. It all started because their dad died and left this crazy amount of money. I mean, think about it. Over $2 million in today's money is what he left for his wife in the early 1900s. Like that amount is just staggering to me.
Instead of any of them getting the money, they all just destroyed their lives.
Yeah.
Where did all the money go?
I don't know what they did with it. No idea. Of course, I always heard about hope chests. I never had one. Did you?
No. We were born way too late for that, thankfully.
Yeah. I mean, I knew that like in the hope chests, a lot of people would have them, and that's where you would store your linens. I know my mom has one at the end of her bed. Like all her sheets and pillowcases and all that stuff. That's where she puts all of those things.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard of hope chests before, but I really just thought they were chests. That I really thought they just all used them for, traveling and whatnot. I didn't know that it was to place all your hopes and dreams of being a trad wife.
Right.
I had no idea.
Yeah.
This is the programming.
Right. Yeah. But, back then, I mean, that was the thing, right? You were raised to want to be a wife and have all the things. That's what your goal was. Be a housewife.
Yeah, that was your only option.
It was.
You couldn't survive or have a home or have money without a man. Well, whatever. That's a whole nother conversation.
Yeah. Yeah, one that we're not going to dive into because it'll get us really mad.
Yeah. That's way too much riling up for this call.
Yeah. All right, well, if you guys enjoyed this story and would like to help us grow, please hit the like and share and subscribe button on any platform that allows you to do it, especially on YouTube. So leave us a review if you can as well. We appreciate you taking the time out of your day to spend time with us. So as always, thank you for listening. We appreciate you. So have a great week, and we will see you all back on Wednesday for Round Robin.
Bye.
Bye. I know we already said goodbye, but I want to give you guys another sneak peek to how we're going to kick off the Malice Show. This is a song that I created, so enjoy. I love it.
Fog rolls in from the Great Lake shore. Whispers of secrets and small town lore. Snow hides the truth where the pine trees bend. Some stories never reach their end. Murder and mayhem, death and despair. Footsteps are fair.